So, introductions. I am Laurie Kallinen. I do have a home sales cottage industry of making and selling my jams and jellies. We have some over here on display. I actually make more varieties than that, believe it or not. It depends on the season. Sometimes I sell out of something that's an early season fruit, or for example, I'm almost out of crabapple. I won't be able to make any of that until crabapples are ripe again this fall. So that affects what varieties I carry. I have been making jams for my family for 25, 30 years. And I got to the point that all the boys are now grown and on their own, and I still loved making jam. And one day I was here at the farmer's market, and the gal that had previously been selling jams had moved out of the area, and I was just jokingly saying, I got so much jam and I don't have anybody to eat it. Well, the next week I brought it and I almost sold out. And that kind of started me on the way, and every year I try to add a new flavor, new variety. So that's my backstory. This event, I do want to point out, is in conjunction with Charlotte at the AgroEcology Center. This is Charlotte. She is wonderful and amazing, and I love her. And hardworking and saves my butt sometimes. But anyway, we work together to make a grant proposal for making classes like this, to teach people how to preserve food, how to harvest, how to grow, whether it be animal, mineral, or vegetable. So we applied for a grant and received that grant from the Laura Jane Musser Foundation, and that is what makes this presentation possible today. So this is the plan, what we're going to cover: the types of preserves, wild harvesting and buying fruits, tips and tricks of the trade, pectin, what the heck is it anyway, what equipment is needed. I'm going to cover some things you don't necessarily need and just explain a wider variety, but I will let you know the critical things, which really is not a lot. Water bath canning versus pressure canning, we'll discuss the differences of that. And then we can open up conversation about eating, sharing, and selling, which is, what I ended up getting into. So first, a little history of jam. Jam actually dates back to the 4th century. It was the first recorded recipe that had any kind of preserved fruit like this. And it was quince, which is a fruit I've never eaten. It's a southern thing, I think, or European. Anyway, quince was mashed up and preserved with honey because, as many of you might know, honey has amazing antibacterial properties. Bacteria does not grow in honey. So when they mixed the quince with the honey, it would stay stable. Sugar didn't come in until the 6th century. Cane sugar became a product that was available beginning in Persia, of all places, and from there it migrated across all of Europe. But sugar was extremely rare and very, very expensive, so it was really a condiment for the wealthy. Jam began to be made in around 1600s in Europe, and it was something that the royals would have. The King of France or Queen Victoria is known for her Victoria sponge cake, if you've ever heard of one of those, which is a sweet cake that's layered with cake, jam, cake. And so that became a very amazing thing, and only the well-to-do could afford to have that kind of luxury. But what did make jam available, jellies and jams available to the common people, was when they could commonly get the sugar that was required. And that, sadly, is because of slave labor in sugarcane plants. That made the sugar very affordable for the average person. So we kind of got that off the sweat of somebody else's back, which is not a proud moment in history for us, but it did open up that realm of having sugar to be able to use as a preservative. So then, what is the difference? Can anybody tell me what the difference of the different, well, it's right there, you can read it. The differences between jams and jellies is jelly has no fruit bits in it, no pulp. It's purely the juice. Jam does include the juice, but it also includes the mashed or blended pulp and parts of the fruit. Preserves are the next step up. They have the bigger chunks in them. And marmalade is the ultimate chunky thing, and it actually has chunks of the peel in it. So it's typically a citrus, an orange or a grapefruit or something like that, that is made into marmalade. So now it's the question, foraging versus buying. When I started making jelly or jam, all I did was buy strawberries at the store and make it at home because it was kind of fun and it was a way to make some really good stuff that was for my kids growing up. But one of the things to consider is that there's a lot of fruit available that we can wild harvest also right outside the door. Another key is to buy it in season. When I do buy fruit, I don't buy strawberries in January. If I'm out of strawberries, I wait till they're back in late May, early June, and then I'll stock up. And one of the ways I hang on to the fullest, richest flavor is that I'll process it down into the form I need it to make the jelly or jam. And then I'll freeze that fruit. And we keep our freezer at a very cold temperature, right around 0. So we have very little freezer burn and it lasts a long time. Have any of you guys seen the movie The Help? Yeah. All right. It takes place in the 50s down in Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. And there's the housemaid who is very spirited, we'll say, Minnie Jackson. And she is known throughout the area as a wonderful cook. And she's trying to teach the woman she works for how to cook, but she tells her, don't ever buy anything unless you can buy it from a stand along the side of the street. If you buy your strawberries in January or your tomatoes in January, they aren't going to taste like a vine-ripened tomato in August. So you prepare things and do things in season. And doing that, prepping the fruit and putting it in the freezer like that helps you when so many things come ripe at the same time and there just aren't enough hours in the day to get it all taken care of all at once. Around us, let's see, is it the next slide? Oh, no, back one. So just a list of some of the things that are available to wild harvest around here. We have June berries, chokecherries, thimbleberries, pin cherries, blueberries, currants, both red and black, high bush cranberries, dewberries, red and black raspberries, rose hips, gooseberries, cranberries, and not to forget about the dandelions, clover, fireweed, and other flowers that you can make jelly from. I did one year make lilac jelly. I will never make lilac jelly again. Lilac jelly tastes just like Grandma's eau de toilette.
Damn, I have some of yours at home. I haven't opened it yet.
I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. But some people must like it because you can find recipes for it.
Huh.
Some people like lavender. I don't care for lavender. So
are the
I guess we'll find out.
flowers being used for like nutritional benefit or just flavor?
partly, fireweed in particular has a lot of antioxidants. It's very rich in the, I'm gonna butcher the word, polypropyls, I think. Maybe I might not. This is why I have this all written down on a piece of paper that I post every week at the farmers market, because I can't remember the big words. But it has a lot of nutritional value, and that is retained even in the jelly making process. If you go up to Alaska, there are so many different fireweed flower products that are available because it's just a wonderful plant. So Different ways to preserve the fruit include, as we had discussed a little bit ago, freezing. Freezing retains more of the nutrients and flavor than canning or drying fruit. If you canned peaches, like whole chunks of peaches, you lose a little of that nutritional value. But when you freeze it, or make jelly and freeze it, it retains more of that nutritional value. Canning, the benefit is that it, by raising it to a certain temperature, you are killing off that bacteria, and it vacuum seals so that bacteria does not grow. Microorganisms can't grow. Another way to preserve it is dehydrating. This removes the moisture from the fruit, leaving a stable food that microorganisms can't grow in. And my favorite way to preserve fruits is, of course, making jam. So let's just touch on a few of the tips and tricks of the trade. As I said before, I often buy fruit in season and prep it for later. Just as an example, a little while ago, I went to the store and I bought 8 pounds of strawberries. So that evening, I sat down by my TV with my different containers and had my strawberries and a discard for the greens and the trimmings, and then my 8-cup, here I'll grab it, either a 4 or 8-cup measuring pitcher, and once, depending on if I'm wanting to preserve that in quarts, 4 cups at a time, or gallons, 8 cups, well, I use a gallon bag, but it's actually a half gallon, 8 cups of berries at a time. And then I just have the berries there, and I just sit and I watch TV and I take care of my fruit. So that's really relaxing for me. Out of that 8 pounds of fruit, I got 4 quarts of frozen strawberries and about 1 quart that we kept for fresh eating. When I wild harvest fruit from along country roads, I sort and rinse the fruit again, filling quart and gallon bags, depending on what recipe I'm going to be making it into. With some fruit, particularly those having pits, like chokecherries, which we're going to talk more about today, I'll cook down the fruit and I'll make it into a juice like this. And then, of course, label it so you don't think that plum juice is chokecherry juice or vice versa. So I'll make it into the juice and freeze it that way, which takes up a lot less room. And as I said, be sure to label it. I actually was digging in my fruit freezer. Last year, I got a new wonderful thing. I have a 7 cubic foot little upright mini freezer, and it holds all my fruit. So I can go to my other freezer and actually find the meat. So I love my little freezer, but there were 2 bags in there, and I was looking at them and I thought they were bags of mushrooms. It's like, I don't remember putting mushrooms up, and why would they be in my fruit freezer? Well, I took a bag out and looked at it more closely, and it's actually plums. But they were just the right shape, they were curved like a mushroom. So anyway, label. So now we're going to get into the pectin. So what is pectin? It's a natural substance that occurs in fruits and I believe some vegetables also. It can be bought in grocery stores. You can make it at home, something I've never done, but it can be made from apples or apple peelings especially. Some fruits, what it does is in the cooking process, it thickens the jam or the jelly. Some fruits contain so much natural pectin that you don't have to add any, like apples, apricots, citrus fruits, cherries, they all contain the most. So if you're making those kinds of jellies and jams, you probably don't even need to add pectin. Pectin is a water-soluble, either thick gel-like liquid or powder, usually made from apples. Most pectins require sugar to work its magic, but and the thickening begins when it comes to a boil. It has to have a combination of the pectin and the heat to cause it to gel. Powdered pectins like Shore Gel, which is what I use most of the time, or liquid pectin, which goes, one name is Certo, is a common name. They both can be used, but they require specific amounts of sugar. So if you want a low sugar recipe, you can't just automatically put only half the sugar in, because it might not, your jelly might not set. You might have syrup instead. So powdered sugar is put in at the beginning of the cooking process, and the liquid pectin, did I say powdered sugar? Powdered pectin. That's added at the beginning of the cooking process. Liquid pectin is added at the end. So if you find yourself wanting to use the liquid pectin and your recipe calls for the powdered pectin, you have to not only change the pectin, but change when you're putting it in. You have to be sure, because if you use liquid pectin at the beginning of the process and cook it in with your fruit, your jelly's not going to set. Same with the powdered pectin, if you put it in at the end, it's not going to set. They have specific times they have to be added. Pomona's pectin is the third kind of pectin. It is completely different. It comes, you can buy it in small boxes, but I buy it in bulk. And so this is the powder, but it is activated not by sugar, but by calcium water. And this is a little bit of a calcium powder mixed in with just water, a half teaspoon of calcium that is provided with the powder, and a half cup of water. And it'll last forever. It's just water and calcium. It doesn't spoil. So using the Pomonas, you put the calcium water in at the beginning and the pectin in at the end. So it's just another step to be aware of. But with the Pomona's pectin, this one will let you change the sugar completely. You can leave sugar out, you can cut it in half, you can use more sugar, it doesn't matter, it won't affect it at all. You can do double and triple and quadruple batches if you want, because with regular pectins like Shore Gel, if you do more than a double batch, it probably won't set. With the pectin, you don't have that problem. With the Pomonas.
Can I ask a quick question? You may have an answer. I'm just curious. How long exactly would that be shelf stable, those two activators? Like, is that?
The pectin powder is shelf stable forever. The calcium water, that sat in my fridge from the last batch of jam I made last fall until this spring, and I used it and it worked fine. It's basically, it'll last forever. I throw it in my fridge just because I know where it is then. I'm not sure that you have to refrigerate it, because it's just a mineral added to water.
So hypothetically, with those two things on your shelf, you could always
Use them till they're gone. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. That is another benefit. I think Shore Gel does have an expiration date on the package, but I've never had one not set because it was old. I've had it not set because they changed the sugar amount, but lesson learned. You can be freer with recipe changes and use less sugar. You can also use stevia, honey, erythritol, monk fruit, any number of other alternate sweeteners. One caution is that I know with erythritol, which if you don't know what that is, it's a sugar alcohol, not alcohol as in alcoholic, but as in the chemical compound. It has zero glycemic effect, so using it in place of other things is great if you have sugar issues or just want to avoid the calories or whatever. But it will cook wonderfully, but once you open the jam and you put it in the fridge, when it gets cold, it recrystallizes. So you have little bursts of sweet, which can be nice if you like that, but it's not for everybody. But if you're going to open a jar and have it on the counter and use it up in a week, you won't have a problem. So then we'll move on to what type of, oh, there's the pomona's pectin. What type of equipment do you need? So really the ultimate that you need is a large soup pot, 4 quarts or more, which you can reuse. If it's deep enough, you can reuse as a water bath canner. And I'll explain the water bath canning in a minute. You'll need some household measuring spoons and cups, so nothing special there. There are a couple of tools that are different though. There is a jar grabber, which this comes in really handy when you're handling the hot jars. You can just pick them up, whatever size they are, and move them without burning your fingers. So that's one. This is a funnel that's specifically designed for using with canning jars. It will work on wide mouth and small mouth jars. So it just sits on top there, and then it just makes it a little neater. It's not required by any means, it just is a tool that's handy. So, let's see. There are some other additional things that are handy, as I said, like that measuring. This is a little tool called a lid magnet, and a recommended thing to do is to put, let me grab one of these. When you're making the jelly, it's recommended to put the lids in a container that has quite hot water because it helps soften up that rubber. It's not necessarily always required. I mean, it can help the seal though. So but when it's in that hot water, that's what the magnet does. And it keeps you from actually, usually, if I can get it out there, from touching the inner surface of it. Just another way to avoid bacteria. So we've got our canning jars and lids. One thing that is recommended is water bath canning. This is not a water bath canning. This is just a stock pot that I have. And this is a little rack for canning. It fits down in my pot. There are different size ones you can get. When you water bath can, what you're doing is you're putting your jars of jelly down in, and then you're going to boil them for 10 minutes. It'll kill off any potential bacteria that might be in there that weren't killed in the cooking process. And it also heats the jelly up to the point that it will create that vacuum seal. So you put your jelly down in, it should be covered with at least 1 inch of water above the jars. And then when you take it out, you simply set it on a towel on the counter and let it cool for 12 hours. You should leave it undisturbed for about 12 hours. It might be fine sooner, but that's just the rule of thumb. So you can get a rack like this, or if you have a little screen or something that you can put in the bottom, anything that will keep the jars from actually resting on the bottom of the pot, because if they're sitting right on the bottom of the pot, it can cause the jars to break. So you want to have a little gap in there. If you've got some kind of little rack that'll fit in the bottom, and set these on. Or
when you water bath, do you put your jars in the boiling water before you put the jelly in it?
no.
No.
Some people do. Some people do as a way of sterilizing the jars.
But
some people sterilize their jars in the oven. And it can make a difference what you're canning. If you're canning meat, you have to be really careful. Everything has to be sterile. If you're canning jelly, the acid level, it greatly reduces the amount of any botulism or microorganisms or bacteria from growing. So it's not as crucial. So you can also buy a commercial water bath. Usually they look like this, and they'll come with the rack. It's not necessary, The only thing that's necessary is to have the jars be able to rest off the bottom of the pot and boil them for 10 minutes. And that will kill any bacteria that's in them.
When you, okay, so if you don't sterilize the jars before you put your product in it,
I always wash and have mine freshly washed, cleaned in the hottest water I can. If you have a dishwasher, which I don't have a working dishwasher, you can put the jars in the oven on a low temperature, just so they stay warm. You can run them through a dishwasher if you have a working one on a sterilized setting, and that will heat the water to the point of sterilizing them. Again, I say that's most critical when you're doing things like meats and low acid foods. When you water bath can, it basically is going to take care of that sterilization.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
So can you heat the water up with, or should you heat the water up with the jars, or is it okay to put them in hot?
It is recommended that as you turn your water bath can water on and then go on prepping so that that's already hot.
Okay.
So you're putting your hot jars into hot water.
Okay.
You don't want to put your hot jars into cold water because that'll shock them and they'll burst. I'll get more to the water bath canning in a little bit. So I think that pretty much covers the equipment. One other item, and again, this is really only necessary if you're doing a fruit like chokecherries, where you want to strain out the pulp from the juice. If you want to make nice clear jelly. I don't care about clear jelly, I care about flavor. I mash the bejesus out of my chokecherries and get as much flavor, as much pulp as I can. But you pour, after you've cooked down your juice, which we'll discuss in a minute, you pour it in here and strain it through here, and that takes the food pulp and the chunks out, keeps the seeds out, so that you have nice clean liquid underneath. And it doesn't have to be a fancy thing like this. Put it over a pot, put it over a bowl, whatever works.
What is that called? Is that the nut milk bag, or what is that?
This is a jelly straining
Jelly
jar.
straining?
Yeah, I have some that are solid material as well.
Me too.
So when you're doing your chokecherries, do you use those cones, or how do you mash them?
The food mill, like that you grind around, I have done that in the past.
Okay. Is there one that's a cone that with holes in it too? That would
Yeah, you can put cheesecloth in that, line it with cheesecloth and pour it down in through one of those. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you can use things you have at home already. You don't have to go out and buy all the gadgets. So let's go on to water bath canning versus pressure canning. As I mentioned, you need a high acid food in order to be able to process it with water bath canning. Things like making pickles because of the vinegar content, making jellies and jams that either have enough acid to them already naturally, or like cherries, apples, things like that. They don't have a problem, but some fruits you will need to add a little lemon juice to. So pay attention to those recipes because that brings that acidity up high enough.
How do you test acidity? Is there like strips or something?
I use tested recipes,
Oh.
so I don't test for acidity myself. I am familiar with the sites I get my recipes from, and I have confidence in that. I don't know that you can add too much. So it might alter the flavor if you added a half a cup of lemon juice instead of a quarter cup of lemon juice. You're gonna alter your flavor a little bit. But I would not ever go less than the recommended amount of either apple cider vinegar to add or lemon juice, lime juice, whatever.
What is the recommended amount of the pH or whatever of the
I was gonna look that
I
up.
think it's under 4.3.
And-
It's 4.3. I think.
Yeah, I
For
know
water bath?
it's in that 4.5 to 5 range,
Yeah.
I think.
So it would be anything less than 5,
If it's less than 4,
or anything less than 4
4.3, yeah.
shouldn't really be water bath canned.
No, or you add.
Or you have to add.
Add lemon juice or
Okay.
apple cider vinegar.
Is that true with meat? Can you water bath can meat?
You cannot water bath canned meat. Absolutely not.
Right.
That has to be
Pressure
pressure
canned.
cooked.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Things, soups, you can can soups, carrots, things like that have low acidity have to be pressure canned. I can water bath can my pickled beets, but I can't water bath can my carrots.
Ooh.
Because carrots don't have enough acidity. So they have to be pressure canned.
Oh, but what if you pickled your carrots?
If you pickle your carrots, then you can water bath, yeah, because you've got that acidity there.
But you're just canning carrots just canned in
Yeah,
water?
just because they won't, I don't have a root cellar or basement, a cold storage. So I can it, and besides, I am the most lazy cook in the world. I love to go to my cabinet and say, ooh, jar of carrots. Ooh, here's some canned venison. Yeah, we'll have the asparagus with that. Pull all that out, and in 15 minutes, I've got a good meal. So I will can all day long if on a given day I can have a meal in 15 minutes or less. So yeah, it's weird. I love to can. I hate to cook. Anyway, water bath canning uses boiling water. The temperature has to be above 212 to kill microorganisms, and is suitable for high acid fruits and foods like pickles, relishes, because of the acidity prevents the growth of botulism and common food spoilage. The indirect heat from the surrounding water also helps, so food doesn't need to be heated as much as it would in a pressure canner. When either pressure canning or water bath canning, the jar should never rest directly on the bottom, as I mentioned. This often leads to breakage. So you need to have some sort of, I've got a little screen that goes over a pot, one of my sauce pots, to prevent splashing. I just put that in the bottom of my bigger pot and rest the jars on that. So you don't have to have anything fancy or special or expensive. Pressure canning uses steam and pressure to seal jars and reach higher temperatures than just boiling to inactivate pathogens like Clostridium botulinum. Pressure canning is necessary for low acid foods like vegetables, meats, and dried beans, as well as non-acidic foods. A pressure canner is required for this method, and the internal temperature of the food can reach 240 to 250 degrees. Processing times can range anywhere from 20 minutes up to 100 minutes, depending on the temperature and pressure. For example, canning meat can take 75 to 90 minutes to process. So jams and jellies, in general, do not need to be pressure canned. It'd be pointless, long process, unnecessary.
So, is it ever doubled up, like vinegar plus rabbit in a jar, pressure can?
I would want to
You could do that?
research that. Anything like that, you would want a pressure can. But if you're
Yeah.
putting vinegar in it, I don't think that would make it, because meat is involved, it would not make it so you could water bath can it, even by adding the acid.
Right,
You would still want to pressure can it.
okay.
You guys should really can a lot of your rabbit though.
That's the
It's
idea.
an
You gotta
amazing
really
idea.
nice pressure canner, just haven't
Can you
figured it
sell
out yet.
pressure canned meat at the farmer's market or no?
No,
No.
because canning meat, any kind of meat you sell at a farmer's market or similar type sale, has to be processed in a USDA inspected kitchen. I would have to do some research on the level of licensing the kitchen here has, because there's like a couple of different tiers. But there's a remote possibility that you could can that here in the USDA inspected kitchen. Again, I say that with the caveat that I'd want to confirm what level the licensing is that we have. But potentially you could do that here and then be able to sell it, but you have to have proof that you produced it in a licensed kitchen that's inspected. So, yeah, there's some hoops to jump through there.
And not so much with your jams, like you can
No.
sell the jams and.
These
it's not a
fall
big deal.
under cottage law, which is a food law that allows certain items to be processed in the home that you can turn around and sell. One of the things is involved in being able to sell under the cottage law is that when you sell it, it can't be anything that requires any cooking after received. So you don't need to cook the jam. I mean, you can put it on meat and cook it, and it's not gonna hurt anything, but you don't have to cook jam or do anything to it after the fact. You can sell cookies because you're not gonna cook them after the fact. You couldn't sell
Cookie dough.
You can't sell cookie dough because that involves raw ingredients. Trying to think of some others. You can sell canned goods, like canned carrots or things like that that are pressure cooked. Up to, there's a profit limit. You can sell up to $5,000 without any licensing or whatever. You do need to do proper labeling, which I can talk about later. But if you sell over $18,000 worth of food, then you're talking you have to be in a licensed kitchen. Between $5,000 and $18,000. If you sell more than $5,000 but less than $18,000, you have to take another level of training and you get a license, but you still don't have to be in an inspected kitchen. So I can talk more about the cottage food laws later if people have an interest. Okay, the process of making what we're going to do today, chokecherry jam, is first we, hang on, I think my notes are out of order. Here we go. The process of making the chokecherry jam, 12 cups of chokecherries, and I can show you, I have these cleaned and prepped. These are my chokecherries, these are from last year, and I have cleaned them all, got all the sticks and leaves and everything out of them, put them in my bag here, and then frozen them. They've been frozen ever since the end of summer last fall, so they are good to go. 12 cups of gathered, cleaned chokecherries will produce you 6 cups of chokecherry juice. So once you gather, sort, and rinse, I had hoped to actually pick a few drupes of the chokecherries to show you what they look like now. The reason I decided to do chokecherry, it does involve an extra step in the jam making process, but you can make any jam with the rest of the knowledge, but these are coming due right in the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks to 4 weeks, they're gonna go crazy. They're starting to turn color now. So just a couple of more weeks and you guys can go out and harvest your own and know that you can make this great jam. It is literally my favorite jam of everything I make. And that's saying a lot, because I don't even have everything there.
Wow, and they're somewhere here?
Yes, they are right in at every ditch around here, every side road, every property around here, chokecherries are everywhere. And they cost you nothing but time.
Okay.
Yeah, we gotta get on it.
Yeah, I
Chokecherry security.
It look like, yeah.
Okay, so the process looks like this. You're gonna take your chokecherries, put them in your pot, and cook them down. You don't need to have any special pot to cook the chokecherries down in, just a pot that's enough bigger than your 12 cups of chokecherries that it's not gonna boil over and make a mess. So you place the berries in a 5-quart or larger pot and just cover it with water. Cook the berries till they break open and release the juice. Now here's where you have a choice. If you want nice crystal, pretty looking, translucent jelly that doesn't have any pulp in it, stir very gently and just continue to wait until all those berries are broken open. And then you're going to gently strain those berries out. without squeezing it. I mentioned it before, I like all the pulp, I like all the fruit and the flavor, so I mash the bejeezers out of them. So if you don't, and then technically it's a jam because it has the pulp, but you can mash them in a food mill. It's a long process, it's kind of a pain, but so worth it for the jelly. Or you can use one of these that I pointed out before, strain it in here, put your berries in here, let them drip drain, even overnight, to get as much of the juice out. I use a pair of tongs and I'll squeeze the bag just to get every last little bit of that out. So that is the easy way, or the least, doesn't need anything special way to make your chokecherry juice. And the juice is what we make the jelly out of. Another thought, we have, this is my baby. Good finished product, it's called a mehulisa. And there are other products by other names. It's a steam juicer is what it is.
Yeah, what's my always telling us about them?
So, a mehulisa is the finished version. As I said, there are lots of different ways. This one, you can get them for, I suppose, $60, $70 at the bottom end. This one was about $100. And you can, sky's the limit, you can pay for all kinds of fancy expensive. But this is an amazing thing. So what you're gonna do with this, if you decide to borrow one or get one, is you place the clean choke cherries inside this top section, which is a colander. And then there is the middle section, and you can see it has this funnel in it. In the bottom section, there's a cutout notch for that funnel, or for the hose, but otherwise, all you do is you fill water in this, that's it. I overheated it, so I kind of stained the bottom one time. So you set it up like this.
Water in the bottom. and
Water
then-
in the bottom, nothing in the middle section, and your fruit in the top here. So I'm gonna put my fruit in the top, out of the bag, of course. Put it on here. I'm gonna put it on my stove on high and start steaming it. And that steam is gonna come up through the funnel in the middle, heat these berries, and that juice is gonna start dripping down into that middle section. Now this is the magic of this invention. Instead of straining with jelly jars, you take this, and this clip can be, so it pinches the hose and it's closed, or you move it up, and then simply gravity feed it right into whatever container you want to put it in. So that is revolutionary.
Do you
to
still
me.
squeeze the top? What's left of the
While
cherries?
I am cooking it, I will get my favorite jelly spoon out and I will stir the berries. And sometimes I'll put a little extra water on it to just get more and rinse more of that pulp and that fruit down in. Then I will drain the jelly or the juice out. I tip it like that. This is not official instructions, this is just what I do. So I tip it like this, and then I will pour a little more, I'll mash those berries. Like I said, I mash and mash them because I want all that flavor. And then I'll rinse a little bit of water over it to wash more of it down. And I will do that until I feel like I have all that there is. And then you just finish draining by, you can set this section aside and just tip it over the bucket to get the last little bits out.
So does the pulp come through there as well, or just the juice?
The juice, but some of the pulp gets through because they're not not tiny, tiny holes. So you do get some of the pulp down in there. It does wash through, but you aren't gonna have any chunks of pulp or skin or none of the seeds go out that way. So this, I bought this 2 years ago. Last year was, at the end of the season, last year was the first year I used it. I will never go back. And I will tell you why. See, here's you using it. That's the unit together, filling it with water. The cone, here's my berries in it. And you can see how I tip it and then I'll rinse and smash it some more. This is why I love the mehulisa. That is a gallon of chokecherry jelly that I squeezed and worked to get every drop of, and it tipped over.
It's a bloodbath.
That was a gallon of, I cried. I just cried.
Yeah.
But I got my kitchen floor clean. So, anyway, I think this is wonderful, but if you only make one little batch a year, it's not gonna be worth it to you to spend $100 on something like this.
When you pour water over the top, I'm curious as far as like the concentrate, the level of concentrate of a juice, of a
Yeah,
juiced
if you look
fruit.
at the juice, it's pretty clear. Especially before the cooking process, it might be slightly opaque, but it's mostly clear. When you can see how much concentrate that is. When you're squeezing all the pulp like I do, it actually is better to add a little more water because otherwise it's so concentrated. So it's kind of trial by error and learning as you go. I put in, I put in 2 bags of this last night when I was prepping the jelly for today, and because I didn't have any of the juice concentrate made, and I didn't have enough chokecherry jars to hand out to everybody, so I made some last night. But I ended up with ultimately 4 quarts out of 2 bags, and these are 12 cups each bag, I think.
So
No,
that
8
doesn't,
cups.
that doesn't affect the acidity then if you're adding a little bit of
No,
water?
no, because the chokecherry itself is not a very acidic fruit.
Don't you need it to be acidic though?
No, you don't have to have lemon juice in chokecherry. If you look online and look for a recipe that's for any sour cherry, and it's the same recipe I use. Some of them say add lemon juice, some don't. I've tried it both ways. I've not seen it affect the preservation of it. But
And chokecherry also has natural pectin, right?
chokecherry has a little bit of natural pectin, not a lot, not as much because regular cherries have a lot of natural pectin. Chokecherry, for some reason, is a cranky fruit that sometimes doesn't want to set. The only problem with chokecherry, if it doesn't set, is not a problem because it makes this fabulous chokecherry syrup. Put it on ice cream, put it on pancakes, it's incredible. Worst case scenario, you don't want chokecherry syrup, you really want the jelly, pour it all back into the cooker, recook it, adding more pectin, and basically reprocess it. But if you follow the recipe that I will be sending to y'all, you should come out right. So,
Can I ask you a quick question? Could there ever be something known as raw jam if you took an acidic fruit and vinegar and put it in a jar? You think it would last?
That's shrub.
What is that?
That's shrub.
And that's
It's
a
not
thing?
really, oh yeah, you know, like.
Betsy Mead sells the
That-
shrub.
yeah,
Have you seen that?
No, it's just,
yeah, that's what I put in my water this morning.
okay.
It's
so
a
that-
shrub from Betsy.
So it's just fruit and.
And vinegar.
And it lasts and you don't have to cook it.
I don't know what the
It's
shelf life of it
juice,
is.
though. It's not like chunks.
It's refrigerated. She refrigerates it though, doesn't
Yeah.
she?
She keeps it in the refrigerator, as
Yeah.
do I.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long it's shelf stable in the refrigerator. I would ask Betsy that question.
Okay.
But I know it's tasty and it's good for you.
I'm just curious, if you wanted to make a clear jelly,
Mm-hmm.
then you wouldn't mix mix it, right?
You wouldn't do all the mashing that I do.
So then you just get less juice?
It does result in less juice, because I'm not getting all that pulpiness in there. Yeah, it would, out of 12 cups of berries, you might get 5 cups of juice instead of 6 plus. Let's see.
You touched on shelf life, so
Yes.
how long will the jellies last? Once you,
Average
you
shelf life of jellies, I think, is 2 years. Yeah, I've had jellies that I've made myself that were much older than that, and they were perfectly fine. But you can't guarantee that to other people. So like if I sell at the farmer's market, I tell people 18 months to 2 years, if they ask. So now I'm gonna quickly go through the process of making the jelly. We've pretty much touched on most of it already, but we'll run through this and then we'll head into the kitchen. So, first thing, as we mentioned before, is prepare your water bath canner. That was this one over here. As I said, this is just a pot. If you have something small enough to fit in your jelly pot, use that, doesn't matter. So you're gonna put your water in here enough so that once you put your jars in, they'll be up off the bottom, and enough water to cover them by the highest jar by 1 inch of water, because it needs to be below the water level to properly can. So we're whether you juiced it in a pot using a jelly strainer, if you mash it, whether you do or don't, whether you use the mehulisa or something similar, you're gonna measure out your 6 cups, and that's what I have here, 6 cups of chokecherry. And if you look at this, if you come over by it, you can see at the bottom, there's a bunch of solids, about 1 inch of that is like solids. So when I'm cooking it, it's all gonna get mixed up and stirred up together, but there's about 1 inch of solids in the bottom of mine, just because of the way I mash it. So then, you're gonna measure your 6 cups, put it in a 4.5 quart or larger pot and bring it to a boil. In the meantime, you're going to take your measured amount of sugar. And for this recipe, it takes 4 cups of sugar, which I have put here. You're gonna take this and a measuring cup or any kind of coffee cup, whatever, jar, bowl, whatever, and take about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of your measured sugar and put it in here, and then, should have had my table set up closer to me. Then you're gonna add your pectin, which in this case we're using Shore gel. You're gonna wanna stir these, a slotted spoon, you're gonna wanna stir and mix that up really well so it's well combined. You're gonna mix that into your warming juice and bring that to a full boil, stirring frequently to make sure you're not getting any scorching. Then you're gonna add the remainder, so like 3.5 cups more of this sugar, whatever's left, is gonna be added once that juice comes to a boil. Return to a full rolling boil. After you've added the sugar, it kind of tones it down. You wanna return it to a full rolling boil, and that's a boil that does not stop even when stirred. That's the key. So from there, you're gonna boil that mixture for 1 full minute. And once that minute is up, pull it off the heat. Then you are going to pour it into your jars. Cover the jars with the ring and the lid. Finger tight. You don't want to ream on them. For one thing, the jars are going to be hot. You aren't going to want to hang on to them that long. But you just want them finger tight, not cranked on. Then you're going to take your, this is the one thing I really recommend. And they're $4 or $5, I think, at Walmart or anywhere. But you're going to lower your jars down into your water bath canner, get them all arranged in there, and then bring that up to a full rolling boil. process it for 10 minutes. And then, once you're done with that, remove the jars from the water bath canner, place them on a towel on your counter, and you wanna leave them undisturbed for up to 12 hours. And that gives the best possibility that that set is going to take hold. If you start jiggling your jars around, it can affect its ability to set. So they do need to sit on a counter for about 12 hours. I usually, if I can anything, I finish it up and then I will put my labels and things like that on the next day. So that's largely it. At the end, if anybody's interested, I can explain some of the rules about labeling. If you are interested in selling what you make, I'm happy to talk with anybody about any part of this process. And I hope that you guys are really enjoying learning more about this, because I think it's an amazing thing to do. I love it. So, yay!
Thanks so much, Laurie.
All right. So now, off to the kitchen.